Legendary quests beckoned with the promise of danger and glory, and only a brave few dared to heed the call. For honor and vengeance, they ventured forth with steel and sorcery to combat the merciless legions of darkness. For it was said that those who answered the call were possessed of the warrior spirit, and the blood of the dragon flowed through their veins.
This is the tale of the vision I had of the final battle between Satan and the reborn Messiah. At the end of days I shall end the charade I created to hide the truth of this tale. That it is not a vision I had but an actual battle between Satan and I that ended with his death, and the defeat of the red dragon. Satan was known by many names: Thoth the self-made god, Hermes Trismegistus, Dagon, the demiurge, Mahakala are just a few. He crafted 3 mystical stones which possessed the power to bend the very fabrics of reality, time and space, just like the character Thanos from the movie The Avengers. However, this enemy was not fiction and very real. The 3 stones of power were the Philosopher's Stone, the Angelic Celestial Stone, and the Crescent Moon Stone. In the Hindi culture, the stones of power were known as the Shankara stones of creation. The power of the stones gave him the ability to bend reality to his will. The power of the stones listed here are the highlighted events that cascaded from the stone's influence and the shadow taint he created, known as Samael, that led these events to occur as he had planned, and set out to conquer all that was and had yet to be. He was skilled in the art of magic, and like all those who possess the ability to wield magic, the angelic energies that were imbued into his life force penetrated through his physical body in the form of what is now called kinetic skills. To each Nephilim, the power manifests strongly in different ways than the other, depending on what area of creation you are supposed to protect. It seemed as though his kinetic skill allowed him to transcend time, though it is unknown if this was a natural ability or one gained through the power of the stones. It was him that caused the origin of the taint of sin within the Garden of Eden that led Eve to temptation. It was the stones that caused the taint in heaven which enraged God and caused his emotions to spiral out of control and moved him to decree the Nephilim abominations, leading the world to be flooded and made anew by his design. It was also the stones that empowered Lucifer to raise his hand against his own creator, sensing that God was not himself but more importantly his angelic essence, sensing the impostor within, causing Lucifer to rebel against his commands. God, however, knew that Lucifer and he had been tainted by the power of the stones, which is why he was cast out of the presence of God and not cast down as an angel, but instead cast to earth and given an assignment with the other 6 fallen angels to have dominion over the fundamental realms of creation. For they held a special purpose in their fallen roles, one that I shall not reveal here. For I hear an angel yelling from heaven saying, "Write not what you see here." Then after Satan had finished binding the proper creator of this world, angelic law identifies this character as Bartholomew, a seraphim in the choir of heaven. The events that followed were his dethronement of God after the flood, and then impersonation of him, which later became transitioned to the dragon Tiamat in Gilgamesh's tale, as well as the fall of Bartholomew into Satan found in the tale of Anzu, the Garuda bird that destroyed the sky temple of Pazuzu, who was a warrior from that city. He turned his attention to man and most importantly Muhammad. To ensure his rule would never be contested, he crippled the Council of Mages with the war against Cuthal, the holy book of the great invisible spirit, and the battle against the Ogdoads, distracting them from the disaster which he knew was to come, who in the end was cast into the forbidden realm and sealed away by their 9 noble sages, never to be opened again. Then, almost immediately, disaster struck as Mount Taba in Indonesia erupted. Vishnu rushed to try and help survivors, warning the king at that time of the disaster unfolding, appearing in the form of a talking fish, and urged him and his people who were at sea to go to the temple at the Himalayan mountains and to seek refuge there, and so thus the king obeyed and survived while the others perished. Both God and mankind had thought they had imprisoned the evil that almost destroyed the world, but they were wrong. All this was to cripple his adversaries, wiping them from the board. And when Sargon the Great stepped up to power and took the Assyrian throne, proclaiming his title as Thoth, the truly self-made god on earth, no one contested him because no one was left to who knew the truth. His conquest had assured that. The first thing he did was dissolve the Council of Medes and decreed that magic was illegal, and to possess or practice magic was an executable offense without question. His guards scoured the countryside and destroyed every parchment of magic they found. The last parchment of magic was destroyed the same night Jesus was born. Sargon continued his assault on all the civilizations of man. Through the Seven Arkans and his role as the demiurge. The Seven Arkans were 7 of the 9 sages that sealed Cuthal in the Forbidden Realm, and those 7 were spectral prisoners of the demiurge, riding forth into civilizations throughout time. Just as they begin to organize as a culture, the 7 will appear in the shadows and assault them with wars, famine and plague, until that culture, in their most desperate hour, will be given guidance in agriculture, technology, science and whatever else is needed, leaving the people in awe and grateful to the benevolent Thoth. Then they build the civilization as they see fit, and ensuring the fall of another kingdom to Sargon's will. As the only sorcerer with knowledge of magic left in the world, Sargon appointed himself as the god called Thoth, the thrice great, self-made, god of wisdom. Now we fast forward to this era. And the vision I saw. Thoth had preserved 16 emerald tablets that defied the laws of time and did not age. He had his priests carry these tablets across history, promising any who read from it to be blessed with great power and wisdom. That was a lie. The real reason for the tablets was to preserve his presence in the mortal world like a poltergeist and create a mystic bridge across time through what he called the halls of Amenti, and he planned on reaching out upon his death to transfer himself into another body through the process of Osiris's tetragrammification, to me. As I read the final tablets and realized his plans, I saw before me a window-like mirror open before me, and it looked just like the image in the video playing in the background. Then out of my peripheral I saw a flash of light. I substituted this part of the story at the time because my viewers were not yet ready to be able to accept that I was this rider until now. The sword I knew well because I was the one who traveled to that era and answered a call for help against the demiurge and his stones. My reply was that he may hold the power to bend reality, but he still has to answer to the laws of nature his feet were standing on, and so I presented this sword as the answer, and a rider wreathed in white and a sword that blew forth every element of nature, and its blade was edged with flickers of flame as if it was constantly sharpening it. 4 mystical circles suddenly were hovering in the air around him, writing glyph magic spells on their own. The spells began to whip around him and became like a tornado. He pointed towards the rippling mirror image and it passed through the portal, which began to clear, and I saw an image of the desert sands near a town called Uruk and a man struggling to escape pursuers through the oncoming sandstorm. Suddenly he looked around him and I heard the man in white mumbling, but where Sargon was within the mirror there was like a booming voice as the sandstorm increased. Then right before him a portal opened and a mystical twister caught him off guard. He began casting spell after spell, but it was not an actual twister. He realized it too late. The glyph spell that was hovering around the man on the white horse began sliding into the mirror and they moved like a snake onto the sands. 4 walls shot up from the floor surrounding him, then a cascade of labyrinth maze-like halls built themselves in all 4 directions around him. A ceiling came down and sealed him within the maze, followed by 4 walls along the outer borders with gargoyle-headed statues on each side. Another 4 layers of labyrinths filled 4 floors above him. It was then I saw a huge stone hand come out of the sands and grasp a labyrinth, dragging it below the surface as the sandstorm increased and it obscured the view. Then suddenly the storm calmed and the sun broke through the dust. There was not a single trace of Sargon, a labyrinth, or even what had just taken place, gone within the sands and lost forever. Then the rider upon the white horse took me up upon the top of a pyramid. There at the base I could see Sargon climbing the side of it. I stood and with my magic summoned a staff and said, every failure you will ever experience shall come about by my hand, false Serpent God. For I was the one within the Garden of Eden, it was I who was cast into the void between life and death, cursed as a serpent never to die and stuck in that form for 1,000 years. I am the true Serpent God, set, and you shall not pass. And with a blind spell of light I blinded him and then kicked him off the side of the pyramid as he fell into the darkness and was trapped within time. They have located the labyrinth I imprisoned him in. From this tale, buried beneath the Persian sands lies the mysterious city they call Irem.
There is a fifth dimension, beyond that which is known to man. It is a dimension as vast as space and as timeless as infinity. It is the middle ground between light and shadow, between science and superstition, and it lies between the pit of man's fears and the summit of his knowledge. This is the dimension of imagination. It is an area which we call the Twilight Zone.